Owen's mole arc is one of the most hated plot lines in the franchise. It's right up there with the animal curse and love triangle in terms of the most loathed aspects of the show. But what if I were to tell you that we were looking at this plotline wrong the entire time? What if I told you we were never meant to see Owen as the mole? What if I told you he was never the only one? Strap in, folks, because this is the total drama mole conspiracy. To begin, we must look at our only shown mole in the franchise. Owen primarily rejoined due to the fact that he was 50k in debt. He was desperate, and that's where most people drop it. But I gotta know, why in-universe is it Owen specifically? Almost every member of the Aftermath would return for that cash. Hell, most would do it for far less. There are smarter competitors, better manipulators, and far more competent players. So why Owen? Well, for starters, he's very willing to play ball with the producers. He's always willing to return to the show, be it as a competitor, host, or just part of the challenge. But even more importantly, it's because he's beloved. According to Blanley, he is the fan favorite. The audience knows Owen, he's kind, naive, and most importantly, he seems dumb. The other competitors, and more importantly, the audience would never suspect him of doing anything malicious. But why would it matter that the audience wouldn't suspect him? He reveals he's a mole almost instantly. Well, it's because we were never meant to know. Let's look back at every time Owen being a mole is brought up. The confessionals, sabotage, even the geisha stuff, all easily removed or explainable without revealing Owen's a mole. Episode recaps can be reshot. The only thing that could not be removed were Harold's accusations and Owen's elimination. And if Harold already let the cat out of the bag, then Chris has no reason to hide it afterwards. But what about all the previous episodes? Why include the mentions of Owen being a mole at all? Well, we have to remember that this is a show in universe as well, a show that has to be edited, and we know that, at least by World Tour, episodes aren't released until a season is complete thanks to this kind firework vendor. So if they're already forced to reveal that Owen is a mole, you might as well throw a narrative behind it and make it seem like a one-time deal. Now some of you may ask, well, what about the Aftermath crew? Wouldn't they need to keep up with the rest of the show? Well, I don't think they know. Between Owen's return in the finale, there is no Aftermath, and in the finale, no one comments on Owen being a mole. That means that either no one cares, or no one but the final 5 know. So we've established that Owen's mole arc was never intended to be shown, that he was likely picked due to his willingness to work with the show, and his personality making him unlikely to be suspected. With those two qualifications in mind, are there any other characters who also tick those boxes? Probably not who y'all were expecting. Off rip, she passes the pattern shown by Owen. While she isn't dumb, her temper makes her appear unstable. She can't work with a team, how could she work with some showrunners? Well, she works pretty damn well. She's an active Aftermath participant, frequent interviewer, and one of the only contestants to ever sign off. She's obviously willing to work for the show, but being willing to work for the show and actually being a mole are two entirely different things. So let me try to pile on some more evidence. First up, they straight up say she was brought back due to popular audience demand. Then when the cast doesn't buy it, they reveal that it's because
not really, but we liked her.
Now that's pretty on the nose. But now you all may be asking, if she's meant to be a mole, then why does she immediately make herself a target? She's hostile to everyone, even people she doesn't have beef with. Well, let's focus on who specifically she's hostile to. Out of everyone on the island, why Bridget? There's other members of the Bass, there's someone more directly related to her elimination. Hell, she and Bridget even had a bit of camaraderie before this in the Ezekiel vote. This just makes her stupid, unless it's intentional. Hear me out. What are Bridget's most prominent qualities in-universe?
Besides, everyone likes Bridget, and she's great at sports.
I want to focus on everyone liking her. At worst, Heather and Duncan are indifferent/average hostility towards her, but everyone else loves her, so Eva's making herself hated by the rest of the cast. But why? At this time in the competition, there was little to no drama left in the tank. The guys were at their closest. Jeff, DJ, Owen, and Trent seem universally loved. Even Duncan wasn't hated by anyone. Bridget became friends with Lashana and Gwen, and Lindsay was getting closer to her too. It was a matter of time before Heather was booted, and someone needed to be sent in or the show would have lost its only remaining drama source. That's why Eva was brought back. She's a lightning rod. Someone everyone could focus their hatred towards who wasn't Heather. She antagonizes almost everyone left and specifically targets the most universally liked camper on the island. She's brought back because she's smart enough to fulfill it, could believably be more hated than Heather, and is humble enough to throw. Eva was one of the perfect moles, but having Heather survive one elimination just isn't enough. They needed to ensure that she sticks around, and who better to ensure that than someone crazy enough to ally with her? Izzy. Whenever there's a theory, she's sure to make an appearance. Izzy has been an enigma since day one. On the surface, she's crazy, but when you start peeling back the layers, you find one of the most calculating players in the franchise. Looking at her criteria, Izzy passes with flying colors. Her craziness, facade or not, makes for a perfect cover. Anything suspicious happens. Hey, she's Izzy, she's insane. No need to dig any deeper. And as for relationship with the show, she's as close as it gets. She's a frequent Aftermath participant. She's the only returning competitor to actively compete in Revenge and All-Stars. And she even continues to work for the producers between Action and World Tour as an actor. I know in the special it's not directly stated to be from the same parent company, but the use of the same set, props, and interns is evidence enough for me. But ultimately, all that could be chalked up to coincidence. Just because these patterns are similar does not mean that Izzy is also a mole. I need something more concrete. So, let me ask you guys something. Have you ever thought about where this bear costume came from? Izzy didn't pack it, she's one of the only campers without any luggage, and it's unlikely to just be left in the woods. So here's what I'm proposing. The forest is quiet, the show's getting dull, so either via producer request or her pleading, Izzy strikes a deal. You guys give me this prop, and I'll do something very, very interesting. The producers go for it, and it's a hit. The producers love it, and now Izzy has her way in. So, Izzy's their gal on the inside. If they need something from a camper, they go to her. A few episodes later, they're in a bind. Heather is in her strongest spot. She controls 5 votes on the team. Great for keeping a villain around, but terrible for keeping her main opposition around. A facet of drama is going to be lost unless some random person takes the fall. A random person who gave an excuse for why they could come back in the same episode. A random person who clearly was able to work with production before. A random person like Izzy. Now, Izzy's fulfilled her initial role, but they left a back door. Sure, maybe she had enough votes on her where she should have gone home. But technically, she was never eliminated. So when Merge came around and the drama was about to take a dive, they needed someone to get in there and discreetly help Heather. Eva made sure she survived an elimination, but Izzy kept her safe afterwards. She was used as an extra vote or two when she needed it most. She helped Heather in her schemes, and she even helped Heather by making herself more hateable to Lashana. Hell, even her elimination is designed to make Heather as safe as possible. The episode she leaves is the same episode Heather finally gets another alliance partner, and afterwards, Izzy cripples her so she isn't perceived as a threat. Now, she probably could have stayed a little while longer, but from a showrunner standpoint, she didn't have to. With her gone, the drama's at an all-time high. Everyone has some hatred pointed at them from the rest of the cast besides Owen, and Heather would most likely be kept around at this point since they believe a jury vote is coming up, and realistically, no one's voting for Heather. Now, I've more or less just crafted a narrative with a little bit of evidence, but I got quite a bit more stuff to mention, so I'll just lightning round it. Izzy gets far more leniency than other campers. She doesn't compete in challenges, she gets away with attacking the host, and, most damning of all, she's allowed to use one of Chris's hair products. Despite us knowing that she hid at the Playa de Losers, she had her secret hidden by Eva, briefly, and Chris even interviews her to keep the facade up. In Hook, Line, and Screamer, despite being the first caught, she's not eliminated. They claimed it was because DJ was the only one to bowl without the Psycho being here. Now, this is just speculation, but it seemed like Jeff was being set up for this elimination, with Chris saying,
By far, the worst blunder yet.
in the special, she knows where the case is. She's also the last person with the case, directly helping to start action. She was asked by Chef to join his illegal alliance first. Why would Chef ask the crazy lady he's fought multiple times at this point? Unless those weren't really fights, but choreographed moments worked into the script. She shoots him down because, as she says in her audition, she's loyal, and right now that loyalty belongs to the producers. However, she does not rat Chef or DJ out to the rest of the cast when she returns. It's because everyone in charge already knows, and because it supplies drama in this season's dry spell. When it's finally time for her second elimination, it's when the drama has already been established on both teams. Lashana is hated by her team, Duncan and Harold's rivalry is at its peak, and Justin has gotten into the swing of being a villain. Izzy is no longer needed, so she was sent home. She even pieces out before the final gilded Chris is given. Even then, Chris left her return open-ended, saying that she was eliminated for the last time, hopefully. So, just in case they need to bring her back, they could. Come time for Celebrity Manhunt, she knew dirt on everyone and sold it to Sierra. She knew that there would be tombs and Come Fly With Us before it was announced they were going to Egypt. She led the camel to the Nile after Team Amazon was led astray. In the fight with Chef in the aftermath over the camel, she has a third arm. She hangs out with Chef in the cockpit, crashes the plane. She's not reprimanded at all because it technically saved production costs. She destroys classic art, which is implied to be a serious offense in universe, gets off scot-free. Spikes DJ's mummy dog, may just seem like a dick move on the surface, but it keeps him believing that he's cursed and keeps the drama alive. Izzy also has access to an extra parachute in Jamaica Me Sweat. Brainzilla's smart talk is just nonsense. She likely left in Jamaica because they wanted an excuse to bring her back. An injury is a valid excuse they've already used with Owen. Look, one of these pieces of evidence is chance. A handful is coincidence. But every single one of these makes a pattern. A pattern that points to Izzy working with production to keep drama alive in exchange for her own personal benefit. But the moles didn't end in this generation. This pattern was kept alive for the rest of the show's original run. But before we get into that, I'd like to plug something very important to me. Superstar Genesis. This is a little side project I've been working on with fellow Total Drama content creator Giggly Iggly. We are very early on in development, but we've already introduced the cast on our YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. Look, I don't like asking for much, but it would mean a lot to me if you even just checked out the channel. Your attention means so much. Anyways, back to your regularly scheduled programming. Mike? You're telling me that this Deku-sounding, boring-ass deuteragonist is a mole? Well, yeah. Look, let's go back to the start. His audition. His audition ends with him wanting a do-over. Now this may seem innocuous, but as shown in the Pocket Pickin' clips, applicants are chosen via sending in CDs, and the Gen 1 cast describes their auditions as tapes, both physical media. Meaning that Mike consciously chose to pick this one, but maybe he's forgetful, or maybe he made a mistake. Well, another small piece of evidence is that he's the only camper who wants to return at the end of All Stars. And it's not just that he wants to return, he wants all of them to return. When he easily had the worst time of anyone there, he loses control of his body, his entire support system is gone, and he almost killed everyone on that raft with him. But if that were all I had to offer you, I would have never even made this video. No, there's something weird about Mike. Something that's felt off for years. Something that I couldn't place until a few weeks ago. And that something is a seemingly mundane question. What are the dream sequences in Total Drama? Despite Total Drama being a cartoon, there's always been some kind of logic that these campers are being recorded. But then how is the show getting these shots? I was lost. I needed answers, and I figured what's a better place to find those than from a creator themselves. Thanks to some help from my good friend, fellow TD content creator, and co-producer of Superstar Genesis, Giggly Iggly, I managed to get a question answered from Mr. McGurran himself, where this was said.
Your second question came from YouTuber Banana Bread Man. I love banana bread, but it's gotta have chocolate chips. If it doesn't have chocolate... The question was regarding all of the dream sequences that happen throughout the history of Total Drama Island, and should they be considered canon or just crazy cartoon logic? Okay, all of those dream sequences come from a specific character. They are not canon. Do not make them canon. They're not canon.
And you know, while that's disappointing, it does make sense. Except it doesn't. Because Heather references the Donut Copter dream. So maybe it's non-canon in the sense that the show in-universe doesn't have these scenes, instead of them just not happening at all. And I guess that fits. It's not like a character with no first-hand experience has ever talked about a character's dreams while clips of said dream appear on the screen.
Scott blackmailed Mike by threatening to tell Zoe about his multiple personalities. Finally, Mike fought back, gave his personalities the beatdown, and got voted off the island.
Wait a minute. How does Chris have access to this? Unless you don't think. These sequences are recorded after the fact. Let's look back at some dream sequences in the past. There was Owen's Donut Copter dream, featuring Owen, a character already confirmed in-universe to be a mole. There was also Owen's weird candy cane Alejandro dream. Owen, as already stated, is a mole. But what about Alejandro? Well, while not a mole, he has worked for the show. Back in the Celebrity Manhunt special, Alejandro was working for Chris for the Total Drama Dirtbag series. It's what got him his role in World Tour. So while not a mole, he is someone with a close relationship to the show. And while not in a dream directly, you know who else comments on something only seen in a character's mind? Izzy. But even after all that, some of you may remain unconvinced. Just because Mike recorded all these sequences does not mean that he is a mole. He could just be including a dramatized reimagining of his support system. And I would be willing to hear you out if it wasn't for this one small, itty-bitty detail.
From now on, this brain is under new management. Mine!
Did you see it? Nope. Alright, I'll pause this time. Boom! Right there, clear as day, Mal appearing in Revenge of the Island. Now why the hell would that be there? If these are recorded after the fact, like I've established, then there's no explanation for this appearing. There's no way they could have known that Mal would have returned next season unless they planned it. Mal appears here because this is in-universe foreshadowing for their next big bad. There is no other explanation. Animation/editing error? Nope, confirmed out of the universe. All-Stars being recorded after Revenge's release? Nope. Chris being arrested, the 1-year time skip, and Sierra's references to Revenge of the Island all disprove this. The only, and I mean only thing that might go against this interpretation is that Duncan recognizes Mal from Juvie. I could think of a couple explanations for this. The first and lamest is that Duncan was paid off. While possible, it feels out of character, but another explanation is that Mal was based off a real altar that later went dormant. Personally, I prefer the second. But the real question is, what does this add to the story? Well, to figure that out, we gotta look at the antagonist of Revenge. Tell me, what's something Joe, Scott, and Lightning all have in common? They're all so stupid. Lightning's obvious enough. He might as well be brain dead. His arrogance and inability to work with those he views as weak would make him a fodder boot in any other season. Joe fares a bit better, being more competent, but realistically, if Scott wasn't here, she'd be the second person out of the maggots. And Scott's the worst of them. While he's not as dumb as Lightning, he is literally throwing. If B could talk, or Dawn bothered reading his aura a bit earlier, he'd be shark bait by episode 3. These villains are all morons. It took a team swap and immunity idol to make sure that they made it to merge. And even then, the only one who made it to the final 3 wasn't even a main antagonist on his team. These guys are far cries from the antagonists of the past. And with the next season's theme being heroes vs villains, they gotta make sure Gen 2 has some representation near the end. So they grab a fellow meant to help out the antagonist from time to time, and stir up the drama, and make him the big bad. A big bad that they can control. He's perfect. He adds to the villainy of the heroes team. He has enough protection to never get voted no matter how evil he gets, and even if he did, he could just rig the votes with no consequence. Mal's purpose is to guarantee that drama will occur, and that some villain will stick around no matter what. Then when the show runs its course, he wants to make sure that he can get another role. Max and Scarlett are a peculiar case. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but I've always been a tad suspicious of these two. If you go back to the Ranking Every Total Drama Character series and the Total Drama Iceberg, you'll see a proto-version of this very theory. While I didn't go into as much depth as I plan to here, the basic idea remains the same. As shown in this exclusive promo clip, Chris destroyed every audition but the ones placed on these 9 discs. When looking through them, none of the characters show any evil intention, with the sole exception of Amy, but even then her villainous plot could easily be revealed due to her sister coming in with her. As such, these two were hired to be the standard villains and help maintain drama. After all, it's the namesake. Then I provided a bit of evidence, like Scarlett, despite being an evil genius, leaving behind several hints that she's evil, Max not being reprimanded for destroying island property like cameras, and Scarlett not being arrested. Then I just kind of left it there. It was a short segment for a handful of videos, so I didn't put too much thought into it. But on my latest rewatch, I came in under the assumption that they were moles, and a lot more seemed to click into place. For starters, Max and Scarlett are constantly running into the robotic side of the island. Just as much, if not more than characters like Sean or Jasmine who are actively foraging the place. But maybe it's just because Scarlett is more observant. It could be nothing. Then you get to Max's mind control device, which manages to work on the animals. However, with the knowledge we later gain, these are robots. This implies that Max designed it with robots in mind. However, he couldn't have known this yet, as shown in This Is the Pits. That is, unless he was feigning ignorance because he's working with the show. Then there's the crocodile incident. Max and Scarlett are separated from the other members of their team. During this, they get chased by a crocodile who gets skewered by a stalactite. Now they're at an impasse. They try to ignore that it's a fake croc, then they gotta pretend that the production responsible for an animal's death right after their host was arrested for environmental damages. Or they have to reveal that at least one creature is robotic. So as soon as the stalactite crushes the robot, they immediately cut to commercial. This allows time for them to come up for an excuse for what happened to the croc, revealing that it and the island is robotic, but only to Max, Scarlett, and the audience. The rest of the cast remains in the dark. Then there's some other stuff like Scarlett explaining her evil plan an episode before Scarlet Fever, her recognizing Pasta Bear as Bling Bear despite never seeing Bling Bear before, and Max having a secret stash of items on an island that is constantly shifting and changing. But Scarlet Fever is the biggie. To start, both Scarlett and Max act surprised that the island is robotic, despite knowing this for several episodes at this point. Chris is also completely fine with giving Scarlett his banana pad. Then she admits that she's gonna take control of the island. She doesn't even try to hide it. Then when she finally does end up in the control room, she immediately knows how to run the place. Then of course there's the Chris dummy that she falls for, despite deliberately sending the cast to a room full of them, then learning that they survived. But what I consider the most damning thing is that the self-destruct button reaches 0. The island should have exploded, unless there was no self-destruct sequence, because the island was never meant to explode. This was just a challenge from the start. Obviously there's Scarlett not being arrested and Max being eliminated when he's done serving his purpose, but another thing I feel like we need to cover is the theme of the season itself. Total Drama Pocket 2 Island is a dogshit theme. Like, think about it from an in-universe perspective. You're a producer, you spent a fortune on a robotic island with robotic wildlife you can perfectly control, and instead of theming the marketing around that, you theme it around the fact that it's a bit more wild than the previous. Doesn't that seem just a bit dumb? Consumers would latch onto the idea of a robotic island way easier than the basic wild setting, but what if that's the point? They want to build hype around the latest season, right? What's a better way than revealing a massive twist and putting the lives of the competitors in danger? As Chris says all the way back in season 1 when Gwen is about to die.
This could be really, really good for ratings, but really, really bad for lawsuits.
But now, they control the escaped psycho killer with a chainsaw on a hook. Well, Scarlett in this case. Though it does seem likely that he is on their payroll with the Celebrity Manhunt special. Tangents aside, they now have all the benefits of the contestants seeming like they're going to die, without any of the risks of lawsuits and such. So this explains Scarlett's presence, but what about Max? Easy, he's the lightning rod. Scarlett's weird, a bit of a challenge threat, and above all else, too smart for her own good. Max is her obnoxious alliance mate meant to piss everyone else off. If they want to target the alliance pre-merge, who will they target? The quiet but useful lackey, or the loud, egotistical head, who, to their knowledge, is responsible for everything? He fills other roles too, test dummy being the main one. But you may be asking, if he's meant to be the lightning rod, then why isn't he eliminated sooner? Well, he was going to be. In Mo Monkey's Mo Problems, he was squarely set up for his elimination. This is even the main plot of the Salmon team, with Scarlett attempting to frame him, and then Ella sings, and that puts a fork in things. But that's fine, they get rid of her now and eliminate Max next episode. I mean, coming up through an elevator is totally cheating, enough to disqualify them. But then neither team crosses the finish line, so Chris can't put the Salmon up for elimination without it feeling unfair. So they make the best of a bad situation. They use this to squeeze more drama out of Sky and Dave, while putting Max in a terrible position. He's a newcomer on his team, he has no alliance, and no one likes him. If Topher doesn't take the bait, he's as good as gone. But Topher does take the bait, and Max manages to sneak by onto Merge. But wouldn't you know it, the drama they caused between Dave and Sky was Max's saving grace. With Dave campaigning for his elimination, it wouldn't make sense for Max to go. And they're already at Scarlet Fever, so they just go, fuck it, he's here now. And when the end of the episode arrives, Chris just tosses him in the cannon alongside her because he's outlived his usefulness. And they need a double elimination at this point anyways. These two were brought in as a refined version of Mal, getting rid of what didn't work while maintaining the idea of villains that they can control. The reboot cast was my greatest struggle. Every other season had a cast member I easily latched onto as I was rewatching the season. But the reboot took me multiple rewatches before I just decided to throw in the towel and start writing this script. Hell, I originally had a section dedicated to the fact that I failed to solve the reboot. Before, I had an epiphany. I was bringing up the loose threads that, when combined with what I learned writing the previous sections, all began to fall into place. Z is an enigma, but with a bit of prodding, and following a few patterns, we can solve him. The first thing that tipped me off was how he parallels all previous moles. His stupidity makes for a solid cover. He has an obvious familiarity with Chris and Chef, and he has the only dreamlike sequence of the reboot. Another thing to consider is that, while cut, Chris does consider Z his favorite in 2 separate occasions, adding to their strange connections. Even if they didn't appear, it still gives us insight on what the writers were planning. Then, there are his strange, seemingly impossible feats that become super easy to explain if he were a mole. Him being confused about his elimination confessional, he's playing up the character. Or his seemingly endless supply of sodas in season 1, my personal little sub-theory is that the reason he was brought on was due to Civil Suit Soda already sponsoring the show in season 1. And this was a form of guerrilla marketing that failed, so they took a more direct path in season 2. After all, it's not the first time this show has taken sponsorship from food companies. But all of that can be explained in spite of the conspiracy. What we need to explain is Z's role as a mole. As mentioned before, I believe a major part of Z's job was advertising, but his other more important role was keeping the drama intact. I mean, look at it. Season 1 pre-merge, he pairs up with Chase and Ripper, both antagonists that he helps keep around. In the final 7, he pairs up with both major alliances, but eliminates himself. And then he returns in season 2, promotes Civil Suit Soda, learns everyone's secrets, and gets eliminated to save Caleb. I want to first touch back on both his eliminations. They're both his fault. And I don't mean like he's put in a poor situation or it's a threat. No, he makes himself the biggest problem each time. In season 1, he could have easily survived the coup if he just said who he was going to vote for. And season 2 was even worse. Literally, all he had to do was keep his mouth shut, but he just kept going and ultimately eliminated himself. While he's never shown to be smart, these are easily both the dumbest decisions he could have made. Unless, of course, he wanted to lose. Up first is Season 1. Z had outlived his usefulness this season. Everyone left on the island was creating some drama with someone else. Once Z leaves, the competition is more cutthroat and thus more dramatic. Z being a mole also helps rationalize the revote too, a request previously denied by Chris every other time it has been asked. Him being voted out also saved either Bowie or Priya from elimination, each of them being the two biggest threats and drama bringers with the sole exception of Julia. Then in Season 2, once Z is forced to reveal the drama, he also reveals everyone else's secrets to make sure that Caleb can stay a little longer, and the prelim drama can keep being milked. This also provides a bit of rationale for Z knowing some of the secrets. The guy's secrets are understandable since they're rooming. Z could have believably overheard or seen MK and Julia's, but Chef and Chris's secrets would make little sense unless he spent a large amount of time with both of them. Z more than likely had the least relevance as a mole. He was an advertisement first and a sacrifice second, but I believe it's a fitting end for this arc. Much like the earlier moles in the franchise, he was never meant to be the drama, he was here to make sure that others could. So before we close, I want to focus on the timeline itself for everyone here. In Season 1, Izzy pitched a concept to a random crew member. Due to this, she ended up as the series' first mole. She was later eliminated to help maintain drama on the Gophers and prevent the two major feuds from getting one up on each other. Izzy dips and moves towards the Pleiades losers, where she's spotted by Eva. Now, Eva knows more than she should, but they need a second mole anyways to be a lightning rod for Heather. Eva leaves as quickly as she comes, and Izzy keeps helping Heather from the shadows. During this time, she makes connections with Chris, and more importantly, Chef. This leads to Season 2, where Chef decides to make his own mole for himself alone and hopes to win the million. He goes for Izzy first, but due to her loyalty to the show, she declines. However, due to her early eliminations and Eva not being eligible for return, Owen is brought in to stir up some drama. He fails and is caught, making him the only in-universe failure. Due to this, the show is placed in the hot seat, and as such, avoids utilizing Izzy, explaining her lack of return in Season 3. It was ultimately for the best, since Blanley would have revealed this conspiracy to the public if Izzy was still here. When the first generation lost its luster and new faces were needed, the show ended up hiring a weird but charming actor with a history of DID to be a more laid-back mole, maybe produce a pre-merge storyline and help a villain survive an elimination or two while getting rid of certain issues. But when the show got picked up for an all-star season and the Gen 2 villains proved themselves to be lesser than competent, the producers decided that he needed to take the reins of it. By the end of the season, they were trying to pick out their next cast before Chris ended up destroying most of the auditions. To make up for that, they hired 2 actors to make sure that the season had something to work with and eventually revealed the big twist that the island was secretly robotic the entire time. The 2 seasons ended up performing very poorly and the series was shelved for the foreseeable future. Then, they got their chance, a reboot. They may have needed a bit more funding, but they've never had issues getting sponsors. But since the big, in-your-face villain moles all blew up in their faces, they needed someone a bit more lax. Just like the old times. So, that's the video. Did you enjoy it? Do you agree? Do you think I missed something? Let me know below. Make sure to check out Superstar Genesis, and remember, that's just a theory. A total drama theory. Thanks for watching.